I'm curious to ask you about a little bit of the influencer world that we live in, now. And now I think, hey, 9.9 Newsstand Instagram. This is a big Instagram. I got to go here. I got to see what this guy has to say. I want to watch his reels and things like that. There's been a lot of conversation, in our community recently about a certain comic book YouTuber, otherwise known as Comic Tom, and he had a comic book that recently came out on, and
Hi, Tom.
Key Collector highlighted it as being the key comic of the week. Even outside of our collecting niche, there's interesting conversations going on about influencers in comics. There's a lot of people that just are making comic books, that are influencers first. Maybe some people think that about me, that I have a comic book, I have a Kickstarter. I'm curious.
You do have a comic book, Mickey? Oh gosh.
Oh my God. Yeah. I'm curious if you have any just sort of thoughts on this idea. Maybe not even specifically about the Tom situation, but influencers' roles in our hobby and the hate that they get, or not hate, or like sometimes the potential hate they can get, or what people feel about them. I'm just curious if you have sort of certain thoughts on this.
I'm going to do some thinking right here with you in real time, because it's not something I think about too much, right? Like I don't really care, but it's good conversation. And, when there's something that happens in the community and everyone's in an uproar because an influencer used their influence to position themselves in a certain way, I can see it from that perspective, because I'm big on ethics. But that world doesn't really overlap with mine too often, because I don't deal in too much modern stuff and I don't really care. But people do have a responsibility to influence, to be, how they say be a good influence? Well, be a good influencer, right? Like have a good influence. And there are certainly people out there that are peddling things that wouldn't necessarily sell themselves if they weren't being peddled. And I know what salesmanship is about, and I respect it and appreciate it. But I think there's also a level of the collecting community that wants to be told what to buy so badly that doesn't really, because they're scared. They're like, is this the right thing to buy? I don't know how to be a comic book investor. I need someone that looks successful, that has history, to tell me what to buy. And there are certain influencers that know that. And the result is they're kind of preying on that. They know that there are community members that are just waiting to be told what to do, and they're taking advantage of it. Now, I decided long ago that when I find friends that are waiting for me to tell them what to do, I'm going to be the guy to tell them not to do it. Like, that's my role. Integrity on top of everything. Integrity and a good reputation will pay your bills. I'm a believer of that. The rest of this shit is a grind. And so, there are people that are sellers that have now established themselves in the comic book space to have a level of influence on the community. And I respect what some of them do. I like the way that they approach it. I like that they talk about their exclusives when they get them, which, by the way, like, is really weird to me. Like, it's you haven't been here 30 or 40 years. You haven't created a bunch of stuff in the comic book space. You sell them, but you got your own exclusive, which I don't spend too much time thinking about, and I don't criticize too often, but it is kind of weird to me. It's like, well, how the heck do you get your own exclusive? And what does that even mean? Did you have part in getting the art created? Did you sit down while the art was being made? Did you write the book? Or is it just your stamp on the back because someone not very high up at Marvel or wherever is aware of you as an influencer and thinks they can, pocket 10,000 comic book sales really quickly by having you shill this to your audience? Like, that's clearly what happens in many cases. And I try to put myself in the shoes of that YouTuber or that influencer and think, would I do that? Well, my ego would certainly be stroked if someone approached me with the idea of it. But would I do it if I couldn't do it in a way that I could stand behind or felt really great about? Or if I would have to give that some thought if I were ever given that proposition. But, well, really long-winded answer. But my thoughts on it are that, yes, there are some influencers that are abusing their influence, certainly. And there are infrastructure, there are platforms like Whatnot that actually encourage this sort of thing, and they actually promote it and sponsor it and perpetuate it. But I don't think it should be lost on the fact that if I feel so strongly about it, then what I need to do is educate the people that listen to me, quite frankly, and preach this idea, not preach, but, preach this idea of accountability as a buyer. Stop buying something just because someone told you to. If it's really a problem for you, if you really got upset because you bought a $20 book and now it's $5 on eBay, well, then maybe just stop buying the damn books. There's a lot of really good looking books out there. You don't need them all.
Yeah.
But I also recognize the fact that I'm adjusted a little differently as an individual. The same ideas that allow me to hunt something that I want really badly, that I love, whether or I have it physically or not. And that's what motivates me to go for it, that I actually do love and desire this thing. When I get it, most people would put it away and never sell it because there's a great possibility they won't be able to get it again. I sell it. And so the same way that I'm able to release something and not feel the fear of missing out in that sense is the same way that I'm able to not buy something just because I like the look of it. But I'm adjusted differently as an individual. And I do actually really appreciate the fact that I do have a community of people that confide in me and ask me these things, because I take a great deal of pride in letting someone know, hey man, trust me, a year from now, you're not going to care that you didn't buy that book. It ain't going to matter. It's going to be one of 75 variants in a short box that you're not going to even visit once a year. Yeah. And if you think you're investing in those books, you're going to learn a tough lesson, because when it comes time to sell 75 books, it's not just like dumping a bunch of Tesla stock. That's not how it goes. You're going to actually have to do it. Time is money, effort is money. You're probably operating at a loss when it's all said and done if you actually factor in time and effort, which you should. I know I sound like a jerk. I apologize, but
not
what
at all.
What are you going to do, man? I want the people to be smarter about their buying practices. Then influencers won't have anything to influence if they're not doing the right thing. It just is what it is. There's a lot of people that are susceptible to manipulation, and there's a lot of opportunistic people that are manipulating the situation. What are you going to do, man?
Yeah. I think you just have to be choosy with what you consume, who you watch, and who you take advice from. And my thing is like, again, I'm wired a little bit different in this as well, but I don't form a relationship with the people I watch or the influencers that I consume. Like, take comic books aside. Let's say I watch an influencer who's like a fitness influencer, and this fitness influencer is selling me this protein powder that's going to make my arms bigger. Like, I don't worry about what they're selling so long as I feel like I'm getting the value out of it. You know what I mean? So if I feel like I'm getting value out of this person and then they're shilling me a product, it's like, okay, it's fine. This is a transactional relationship as well. But if I don't feel like I'm getting value off of this person, then frankly, I just don't watch them. So that's kind of my relationship with it. But
yeah, I do get really annoyed when an unintelligent voice has a bunch of ears being guided by them.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It's so freaking frustrating. Like, literally, that was wrong. That was wrong. That was not right. That was inaccurate. That was my sale. You reported on it incorrectly.
Yeah.
And there's thousands of people watching. And it's like, well, how am I going to unravel this mess that this guy just created because he made a 15-minute video and has an audience that he compiled over COVID? Wow. Like, it's that stuff gets frustrating sometimes.
I don't know. If I misreport your sales, just message me. And
Mickey, you're
I'll
one of the
redo
guys,
the video. I'll redo. Okay. I get it, Manu. I get it. You're talking about me. I get it.
Sorry. I know how to. Hey, there was one time, since we're just off the cuff, there was one time. I'm going to tell you, it wasn't my book, but boy, did I punch at the air. Is that what they call it? Punching at the air. You made a video about the Wizard 9.9 Newsstand that's over 18.3 on Comic Link.
Yeah.
Now listen, all your points were valid, okay? But I'm so in the weeds with that book and that community. I brought a couple examples that I didn't know if we were going to do a show and tell, so I brought some of my favorite stuff, but I won't take it out. But that book was the first time a 9.8 newsstand had ever been graded. This is before the census of Wizard 1s blew up. Shortly thereafter, the census blew up for the SDCC and for the direct and newsstand, which those two, direct and newsstand, are combined in the same census, are not broken apart. And there's a very specific reason why so many were added. A lot of them are file copies. More on that later. The non-file copies are worth more than file copies. More on that if you ever want it. Just DM me. I'll give you the download. But there were seven 9.8s on the census at the moment, 7 or 8 at this time. And that's between direct and newsstand because they're the same census. And I'll leave the seller of the book out. The seller contacted me and said, hey, are there any 9.8 newsstands of this book? And I said, of these, I think there were 8 copies. I said, of the 8 copies, I have personally seen 7 of them. And I'm willing to bet that that 8th copy that I have not seen is not a 9.8 Newsstand. If it were, I've been fishing for it. I've put bounties out there for it. That's a book that I'm after. I haven't been able to grade one. And they then took their finest copy. They're a very, very well-to-do establishment that can find the finest copy of anything in their inventory. Took their finest copy, immediately sent it for grading, achieved the 9.8, then immediately sent it to Comic Link. And I was actually potentially a buyer of that book because I had someone that I can sell it to for around the 12,000, 12,500 range once I was done enjoying it. So I was planning on getting in there somewhere around the $10,000 range, if that could be my cost, like after fees and everything. But that was quickly, I was blown out of the water quickly, and it ended up selling for 18.3. Now, I was extremely happy to see that sale because I know how a couple of the people that I discuss Wizard magazines with, how passionate they are about it, but your passion has to be combined with the financial ability to afford it at that time, right? And not only that, I just knew that there were people that were willing to spend big money on it. And then when you reported on it, you were very reasonable, you were very sensible. You know, you said all of the right things. You don't know how many more of these there are going to be, and sure as shit, there are 5 or 6 more, but they're file copies, and there's a reason for that. I coincidentally did finally grade a 9.8, and I sold it for 12 grand. So I didn't do too shabby, and that was about 2-3 months ago. But there was a file copy sale of $5,700 after the $18,300 sale. And if you saw that, you would have been like, well, Swaggle was right about everything. You want to be the first person to buy something, you want to pay this enormous amount of money, you're going to be left holding the bag when the second one comes to market. But the second one that came to market was a file copy. There is a difference in the optics of that. But it was that video that you made, Swag, where I was like, why is he talking bad about wizards? Wizards are what I do. My goodness.
Well, let me say this. I guess here's my school of thought on that. And look, I've been wrong many, many times on my channel. So don't listen to me. I tell everybody I collect Dark Hawk. Remember, let's put it into perspective here, guys. This is the person you're listening to. But I've had conversations about like the Wizards or like Nintendo Power, you know, #1 going crazy. And I made a video and I got a lot of flack for it. You know, when I made, you know, a little offhand remarks about some DC Bronze Age horror stuff. And my philosophy on this stuff is this, is that not to say that there's like a million copies out there, but somebody has it, right? Somebody has it out there and it just hasn't been graded yet. And, and I don't know, maybe there are people who have 10 out there that haven't been graded yet. My always thing is just like, you know, first to jump is, that's all it is. This person could go to the moon, you know, with that book. I don't know. I'm just always like hey, I don't know if I want to be the first to jump on a lot of these books. That's all I say. You know, that's my one little warning, and I could be totally wrong. And it's the same of any of these kind of like very, very niche, obscure stuff where I just am of the belief that there are ones out there because people tell me stuff. Like people will always be like, dude, no, man, I know a guy that has like short boxes full of this stuff. You know what I mean?
I've heard some stories. You
know, so I'm always like, that's it. That's my philosophy with that. I don't know. Maybe Wizard is the, you know, or the one is, there's definitely a difference between the newsstand and the file copy. I don't know. I don't know that world.
There's definitely a difference between the how many high grade newsstands exist versus the other ones. The file copy is a different conversation altogether. But again, I want to say you were very reasonable in your analysis of it. The only part that was missing there was the emotion. And it's important to not have emotion when you're reporting on just the numbers, but it's important to recognize that in that world of people that are passionate about pursuing that book, there is an emotion that's driving that. And that pool doesn't have to be the general comic book audience. The general comic book audience doesn't have to have the slightest bit of appreciation for what took place with that sale or what that is for that to be a meaningful sale or a meaningful book, right? And that kind of goes to, we have a microphone, we have a screen, and we're talking to everyone, and then but without being in the weeds of potentially what that one thing that we're speaking to everyone is about. But I want to double down on the fact that you were very sensible, very reasonable, and it makes all of the sense for you to have said the things that you said without knowing. Well, it doesn't matter. It was. Well, I tried to. Video.
I mean, we don't need to get into this and stuff. In fact, everyone's going to turn off the video as I get into like YouTube philosophy video conversation stuff. But I do just try to do my best and to just talk about, report things as they are and
Yeah.
minimize my opinion as much as possible.
You do a great job.
Unless later on I can say, you know, in the end of the video, be like, okay, well, here's my opinion. And it's just an opinion. I can be very wrong, you know, but I think that that's always a careful balance that you have to figure out how to do. And I try to figure it out every day, and I try to learn more and more, you know.